Good afternoon. Welcome to the second Bureau of Business Research webinar of the 2022 Fall Series. Today we'll be presenting the research conducted by 4 Bureau of Business Research scholars. These 4 undergraduate students currently work here at the BBR, assisting faculty and staff on the research conducted here at the Bureau. Today's presentation is sponsored by the Bureau of Business Research within the Department of Economics here at the College of Business at UNL. My name is Mitch Herian. I serve as a project director at the Bureau of Business Research. Dr. Eric Thompson serves as the director of the Bureau, and he also oversees some of the research that the undergraduate students will be presenting today. Before we begin, I'd like to point out several features of the webinar. As you can see, we'll be using a PowerPoint presentation through Zoom to present the results of our various studies today. One feature of the webinar is a chat window where you can chat with other participants of the webinar. We also have a question and answer window where you can type in questions that you might have for myself or the students. You can type those questions in at any time, but we will wait to answer those questions to the end of the presentation today. As I mentioned, my name is Mitch Herian. I'm a project director at the Bureau of Business Research here at the College of Business at UNL. I'm joined by 4 students. You can see on the right-hand side of the slide there today, and they'll be presenting here in a minute. Before we get into the presentations, I'd just like to talk a little bit about the BBR Scholars program. So the BBR has had students working for it for many, many years, undergraduate and graduate students alike. In 2018, we formalized a program for students to come in and work with us on various research topics. The Scholars Program, we feel, provides undergraduate students with an opportunity to participate in meaningful economic research. Scholars may work on Bureau-sponsored projects or potentially develop their own research agenda. To give you an idea, this semester, we have several students working on projects that myself or Dr. Thompson head up that are sponsored by outside organizations, nonprofits, and government agencies. Students also help faculty and staff at the Bureau in the Econ department on their research interests. In some cases, students who join the Bureau as scholars also bring their own research topics that they work on. Mentoring is provided by Bureau faculty and staff, as well as senior peers. So this semester, students are generally working with myself or Dr. Thompson. An interesting case we also have is we have one graduate student, an econ upper-level graduate student, who is mentoring one of our undergraduate scholars this year. And she is working on one of her own research topics that she brought in with her as she started working at the Bureau. We currently have 9 scholars in the program. The scholars typically come from the College of Business from various majors. At this point, we have 28 alumni, so graduates of the Scholars Program or graduates of UNL who were scholars during their time at UNL. These students have gone on to work in industry, government, and several have gone on to graduate school as well. A lot of the stuff we do here relates well to graduate school. We do a lot of work, as I'll mention in a minute, preparing students to use statistical techniques and various softwares to analyze data. So in addition to students working with us on various research topics, students also participate in a seminar series that kind of spans the 2 semesters, the fall and the spring semesters. Seminar topics include how to use R, the statistical package R, to analyze data. We also use R to visualize data. So a couple of weeks ago, we had a seminar on how to use various techniques in R to visualize various types of data. Next week, we will have a follow-up to that seminar where the scholars will bring their own data visualizations in and present that to the rest of the group. Early next semester, we will have a couple of seminars on data analysis, so various regression techniques. And Finally, in February and March, we will work on the presentation of results that you get from a data analytic approach. This all culminates each year with the undergraduate research fair here at UNL. So in April of each year, UNL, various organizations here at UNL host an undergraduate research fair where students who have been working with faculty and staff throughout the university come together and present research posters on the things they've been working on over the academic year. What you see here are 3 of the posters that have been presented in the past. Again, we will have, 6 to 7 posters, we hope, presented this April. And I would note that there's an award. There are various awards associated with your presentations at the UNL Undergraduate Research Fair, and the BBR Scholars have had a pretty good track record in terms of winning awards. So that's just a little bit about the BBR Scholars program. Give you a very brief idea of what students do on a day-to-day basis in the seminar series that they work with us on. I will now turn it over to the students who will present their research that they presented last year at the Undergraduate Research Fair. We will begin with Victoria Diersen, who will be looking at the linkage between small business innovation research grants and innovation factors in the states.
Hi, my name is Victoria Diersen. I am a junior economics major in the College of Business. My research project assesses the impact that state-adopted small business innovation research grant matching programs have on the total award dollars that go into each state from the small business innovation research grants, as well as other factors of innovation that include population estimates, median income, the percentage of the state population that holds a college degree, the percentage of the state that was born outside of the United States, as well as the Kaufman Innovation Index score. Some background on the Small Business Innovation Research Grant Program. It was started in 1982, and it enables federal agencies to solicit and accept project proposals from small businesses. Following evaluation, awards are given out to different businesses on a competitive basis, and the aims of these goals is to stimulate technological innovation and meet federal research and developmental needs in the country. Since the start of this program, 34 states have gone on to adopt matching programs to try to help build innovation within their state. Nebraska adopted their own policy in 2011. I have been researching this topic to find if states with matching programs have higher award dollar amounts coming into their state, both on a per capita level and a total award dollar. To do so, I have collected data from 50 states from the years 2010 to 2019 with information from all 10 federal agencies that solicit awards. In my research, I regressed the total award dollars and per capita rates on several different innovation factors, and the main one being whether or not a state had a matching program. My regression results indicated a positive association between the total award dollars going to a state and a state adopting a matching program. There were also positive correlations between median income, population estimates, and college degrees, and there was a negative correlation between the innovation index score. Finally, to note, the states that have adopted matching programs actually saw an increased total award dollar amount of 1.3% overall. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Victoria. We'll now turn to Janana Khattak, who will be presenting her research on central places in retail trade across the Midwest.
Hello, I'm Janana. I'm a junior here at the university. I study political science. I have minors in economics and philosophy. And so I chose to look at central places and retail trade across the Midwest. In our research, we're really interested in finding predictors of retail trade. And one of those factors is already quite well researched and accounted for by the central place theory. This theory informs us that areas that have larger, usually population-wise, areas that are larger are better able to support businesses, and so they will account for a greater share of the market in comparison to their surrounding smaller counties. What we ask is whether or not this theory will hold true for Nebraska and surrounding states. Specifically, we look at 7 states. Those are, of course, Nebraska, Iowa, South Dakota, Wyoming, Missouri, Colorado, and Kansas. I hope I said them all. But to operationalize retail trade, we look at pull factors. Essentially, those will take the local per capita retail sales of any one particular county, and then we divide that by the 7-state average retail sales. And that just gives us a good idea of how much of the 7-state average each particular county is pulling in. Then we can account for central places, which really gives us an idea of the population and that relationship. That was a bit more intensive. What we did was we looked at a map of all of the counties. That was about 550 counties that we observed. And often with central place theory, they will overlay a grid in either a triangular pattern, a hexagonal, even octagonal pattern, and those central places tend to align with the points of the shape that you overlay. So what we did was we looked at about groups of 3 to 5 counties and then looked which of those has the greatest population. And then central place was our dummy variable. So if you were a central place, you were a 1, if not a 0. So then we were ready to run our ordinary least square regression. Just to compare the pull factor and central place. But we also held some things as a control, specifically tourism. To account for that tourism, we looked at a water amenity scale. We were thinking along the lines of tourism, which might affect the retail trade in any particular area, may be affected by those in the Midwest who are going for fishing or for a lake vacation. So we used a water amenity scale that will show the percentage of any particular county that is enveloped by water. Then we also looked at the presence of highways. You're not going to go spend money someplace that you cannot easily get to. So that was the rationale behind those controls. And what we found was that there is a positive relationship between central place status and the retail capture. Specifically, the county pull factor increases by 0.1229 units when the county does hold central place status. However, for future research, we may not get as strong a correlation because using the central place theory, it requires that we have a flat, limitless surface and also that everything be homogeneous. That's just one of the tenets of central place theory. So it works very well for the Midwest, considering our history with the westward expansion and Homestead Act, the pretty uniform division of land, and also just the fact that our topography is very flat. We are the Great Plains. So it may work well here for us in the Midwest, but we are currently expanding this research for the entire nation. And even within our research, the inclusion of states like Wyoming and Colorado could have been a hindrance there. Additionally, it was a little bit surprising. You see the water amenity scale under regression results that had a negative relationship, which we weren't exactly expecting, though that may not be the case when the research is advanced to go across the whole country. So that was our research.
Okay, thank you, Janana. Next up, we have Khaliun, who will be presenting her research on the impact of OPT policy on international students' decisions to major in STEM economics.
Hello, everyone. My name is Khaliun. I'm a senior majoring in economics. Today, we're going to discuss how immigration policies affect international students' major choices. So from 2002 to 2017, there were 1.6 million international students authorized to work in the United States after their completion of their degrees. And this authorization is called Optional Practical Training, or OPT. In 2016, the Department of Homeland Security announced that they're going to extend OPT policy by 2 years for STEM majors on top of the 1 year of regular OPT. So because of this policy, many universities are deciding to reclassify their economics major to STEM economics to attract more international students and give them additional years of work experience. So my research question for this study is that since the extension of OPT policy has the percentage of international students majoring in STEM economics increased. In order to do this study, I did difference in difference event study. And as you can see on this figure, we can see that pre-policy international students and domestic students, it was only 2% and less than 1% for domestic students. But after the extension of this OPT policy, international students majoring in STEM economics increased. And this is similar for domestic students too, but this is a mechanical shift rather than this policy-induced change for international students. And to compare my this result from event study to simple linear regression, I carried this regression, and I got that after the extension of the policy, international students were 1.5% more likely to major in STEM economics after the extension of OPT policy. And for future research, I think it will be very interesting to look at whether STEM economics students are actually taking their OPT time of 3 years or not. And to observe the full effect of STEM designation change, researchers would need more years of economics completion data, because this change only happened 6 years ago. So there hasn't been enough time for international students to fully adjust their major choices to this policy. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Very good study. And Khaliun, she actually presented that as part of an honors thesis. So finally, we have Daniel Pruski, who is going to present his work on the COVID effects on retail trade and hospitality.
Howdy. My name is Daniel Pruski. I'm an actuarial science major senior at the University of Nebraska, Lincoln. So my main research project was, I wanted to see how much the strength of a certain industries in an area would affect the unemployment rate in the first early months of COVID, so the first 3 months. So the two industries I wanted to focus on were retail, trade, and hospitality. I wanted to focus on those industries because I think the common consensus among the populace was that those were the two that were going to get hit the most, because a lot of stores had to close down and a lot of tourist industries like hotels had to close down as well when COVID first hit, and we didn't really know what was happening with it. We also wanted to look at these two industries and see if restrictions on those two industries made any effect at all on how these two industries, how the unemployment in the area affected these two industries as well. So we looked at restaurant closures, which we attributed to what hurt hospitality the more the restaurants were closed. And we looked at non-essential business closures, which we thought would hurt retail trade the longer those restrictions were in the area. So in order to find this, we found data using, we used the BLS to find employment data for 353 metropolitan statistical areas from March 2020 to June 2020, and we found the change of employment. So March 2020 was when COVID first hit, and June 2020 was about 3 months later, and we thought that would be a good time period to kind of see the effect of it in a short term. And then we also used the Kaiser Foundation to find closure dates per state for restaurants and non-essential businesses, and we filled in any holes we could for that data, because that data wasn't necessarily complete. So we manually looked up data for that, and we ran a regular, just multiple linear regression to see if there was any relationship between the two. And the results are over there to the right. And the results were a little bit interesting. So hospitality, we found that it was significant that an area focused on hospitality, the amount of employment in hospitality in a metropolitan statistical area led to higher unemployment in the first 3 months of COVID, which is of course expected, because of the hotels closed down, more people had to become unemployed because of that. Retail trade we thought was pretty interesting because we found there really wasn't any statistical significance at all. So retail trade was actually, and even if there was, we found a positive value for it. So it may actually be slightly more resistant. An area is focused on retail trade, which we thought was a bit more interesting because we thought that would lead to more unemployment when it actually might have led to less unemployment. We could not find any, we found statistical significance for the non-essential, for the restaurant limits, but it was very small and minimal. So we really didn't think that was too important. In non-essential business closures, we didn't find any significance at all. So for the hospitality, we think that makes sense as areas close down, as hotels, a lot of tourist areas had to close down almost everything. So the hospitality would lead to a lot of unemployment for anyone working in a hotel. For the retail trade, we think that maybe the reason that was actually more resistant to COVID-19 would be that maybe a lot of retail trades were actually negotiating becoming essential businesses, so they didn't end up having to close down, or perhaps there was more furloughing in retail trade, whereas hospitality, most of them were fired. Either way, we thought it was pretty interesting that retail trade was not significant, and even if it was actually positive, so more resistant, while hospitality was the much more obvious of the higher the hospitality, the more unemployment you will be facing in the first early months of COVID. And those are our main findings. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Daniel. So those 4 presentations, I think, give a pretty good, it's a pretty good sampling of the types of research that students are working on here at the Bureau. Some of the work is an offshoot, again, of some of the funded projects we have at the Bureau. Some of those research projects that you saw, they're sort of a personal interest of faculty or staff here at the Bureau. So again, I'd like to thank the students for presenting their work and giving everybody an opportunity to see the types of things we're working on here at the BBR. And if there are any questions, feel free to type those into the Q&A window, and myself or the students will be happy to answer those. In the meantime, if you would like to connect with me, here's my contact information. I'd like to point out an upcoming webinar next week that Dr. Thompson will be presenting, titled The Nebraska Commercial Real Estate Study. What this study is we looked at commercial real estate needs in Nebraska following the COVID-19 pandemic. So are businesses downsizing office space or not making any moves? So we have some survey results that are pretty interesting to talk about next week. And finally, if you haven't already done so, there are various ways to connect with the University of Nebraska Bureau of Business Research through LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and of course our website. Feel free to visit any of these, and also feel free to sign up for our newsletter at the email address you see there. And not seeing any questions at this point, I think we can go ahead and wrap up. Again, I'd like to thank the students for presenting their work, and what you saw today was the culmination of a lot of hard work by the students over the course of last year and this year. So collecting data, analyzing data, going through the seminars, having other people critique their presentation of the work. So it's really the result of a lot of work that the students put in over the course of the last year, more than a year. So again, I'd like to thank them, and I'd like to thank everybody for attending today. With that, we will conclude the webinar. Thank you very much.